All right, there you go. That is the #1 shortstopper for the Uganda Cranes, Dennis Onyango. Part of what he talks about is that new 4.5-year deal down in South Africa with the Mamelodi Sundowns. Is of course a guy who has achieved so much, not just for the club and helping them do well on the continent, but also for the Uganda Cranes, taking us to the Africa Cup of Nations, the second time we shall be doing it in Egypt this time around. So congratulations to Dennis, and as we welcome the FUFA President, Engineer Moses Magogo. Good evening. Engineer, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have you here on the show. First big question for you. You look at Dennis Onyango, 4.5-year deal in South Africa. This guy has raised Uganda's flag for as high as he can. He must be one of the biggest assets Ugandan football has ever had.
I've said this before, a number of years before, even before he won the African Player of the Year based on the African continent, that he's the best goalkeeper in Africa. But I think I must also mention today that probably is the greatest Ugandan player in terms of achievement on the pitch. With due respect to very many other players in the past, but I think the level of consistency, playing at the highest level, and for me it was a moment being named in the top 11, standing next to Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah. I think that's the greatest as far as Uganda is concerned. That's my personal opinion.
I follow you on social media, Mr. President. The last time we had a discussion on this show, we had Jackson Mayanja, and we were discussing the greatest footballers to ever grace Ugandan football. You quite had a reaction the next day or the next few hours, and I think you weren't happy with our analysis here on the press box, or maybe you had a different way of looking at it. Let me pose this question to you as we welcome you back to the show. So you're not comfortable naming the 3 greatest footballers of all time in Uganda?
No, but that is a personal opinion, and opinions are going to range, and I'm very, very comfortable. And I'll tell you, in my own opinion, definitely Dennis coming 1, Majid Musi coming 2nd, and Apollo Asuli.
Oh.
But that's my opinion.
Yes.
No, but Mr. President, sometimes opinions are questioned because everyone talks about Phil Pomondi. It's quite interesting.
No, I didn't watch Phil Pomondi, and probably could have been a greater player than the ones I've mentioned. When we were in Ghana playing against the Black Stars, very many people were asking about Phil. I think he was a great player. But sincerely speaking, it is in my opinion and what I've seen.
Okay.
Thank you.
And some of the analysts, Mark, please.
No, I agree. No, it's clear.
No, but I've got to ask him one more question before I bring you guys in. And it's a question I think Jackson Manja discussed on the day, so many guys discussed on the forum as well. Are we running out of beautiful, silky, talented, mesmerizing, crowd-exciting players in Uganda? We seem to have folks who would run with the ball, beat half the pitch. Now we don't seem to have that many of players of that caliber. Are we lacking in that area?
No. It's a challenge the world over. The game has changed. There's a lot of tactics, there's a lot of science, and even talented players all over the world are actually struggling. So it's just about the modern game, that the things that are required to bring a result are totally very different. So it's not just about Uganda, it's about the world. You would be challenged all over the world to name the kind of players you're talking about. Today it's about results, it's about the team. Then it was more about talent, individuals. So it's just about the game that has evolved.
You're fresh from Rome. What has been happening in Rome?
No, normally President Gianni Infantino in his manifesto brought up something new when he said that instead of a country having 1 vote, it should also have 1 voice. Normally when you go into a congress of 600 people at the end of the year, like we shall have one in Paris, you don't have enough time to speak. Everybody doesn't get an opportunity. So what they have done is that they bring over 30 countries in one place, so that gives an opportunity for everybody to discuss certain topics. The most, maybe the highlight of that Uganda and Colombia were the 2 countries chosen as countries to showcase what they have been doing. And for us, we thought that was a very good recognition from the work here. FIFA was excited about our competition, the FUFA Drum, and the kind of extension we are making FUFA House, considering the costs that are involved and the asset we are putting up, and then also the solidarity we extended to South Sudan to try and train the administration. So they thought these are good things we should showcase, and how we have brought close the corporate world, the government, and converting that into results on the pitch. So that was exciting to them, and they thought we should share it with the world.
Fantastic. You are laughing and you're excited about the president's speak when it comes down to the greatest footballers in Uganda. I think he's also playing it safe.
No, he made it clear. He's talking about the guys he watched, so you can't argue with that. So that's quite clear, and it's okay. But I would have loved for him the speech that he made in Rome about our contributions and all. It's something that I would have loved for him to share, so we can listen in on there. But yeah. Perhaps it takes us into the bit about you and that relationship with Infantino and our standing on a continent and in global terms. That is something that you need to shed a bit of light on. What's going on here? Moses Magogo seems to be, well, a little more fancied by the powers that be in world football than before.
He's very close to the FIFA president.
Because the thing is, before what we had, every time FIFA was mentioned in the same breath as Uganda, was if there was a threat for a ban. Because we used to try to bring his predecessors to a book about accountability to government and the people. And then that would be slapped in our faces. FIFA will ban you and things like that. These days it is Infantino and Magogo on the same stage and things. Tell us about this, this whole relationship.
Before he responds, I would like to build on that as well. March 2017, Engineer Magogo, the time that Infantino came into office, and then Ahmad, also new face at CAF after almost 3 decades, and you seem to be, you were on the right side of history. You know, you chose to go on the side of these 2 young gentlemen, and even yourself being one of the youngest FA presidents on the African continent or in the world as well. How important has that been for your presidency, but also for Ugandan football in general?
I think it was a strategy at FUFA. First of all, between me and Gianni, I knew Gianni before he became president of FIFA, when he was the general secretary. There's just one thing about me that I seem to make connections, especially at those world meets. There's always opportunity to meet everybody, and it's a personality thing. So I have the ability to start up people. So I knew Gian before he became president. So when he became a candidate, it was very easy for me to support him. And also he came with a very, very good program, the FIFA Forward. And it's a turnaround of football. People must watch football 10 years from now. If people think football is far much ahead of other sports, 10 years from now, the gap might be very much bigger because of the FIFA Forward. There's a lot of investment that is being made into the football associations and the game of football in terms of development. So I love this program. I love the person. So it was very easy for me to connect. And then when he came in, there was a new wave sweeping in the world. And as FA president, I happened to have gotten an opportunity in Mexico to speak to FA presidents, to give the strategies, and they listened to me. They gave me an opportunity to speak. And for me, when you give me an opportunity to speak, I think my facts and my research about figures and gave me a lead. So in the process, I kind of got recognized. And when Ahmad was coming to office, again, Ahmad was also my friend before. He watched the game Uganda versus Comoros here. He wasn't CAF president then. So there was a connection that we had. And when he came in, we kind of forced him to stand at that time when we realized that Issa couldn't continue anymore. And we happened to win the election. So it's good for Ugandan football that eventually we have somebody in CAF as we speak today. We have the audience of FIFA. I think for me it's good for the country. There are so many benefits around it that come with it. Some of them direct, some of them indirect. But I think it was a strategy at FUFA. When I became president, we decided to make a connection, not only with CAF and FIFA, but also with the corporate world, with the government, with opinion leaders. All these things are a strategy that is happening.
Look, I understand the achievements, Engineer, but you know, when Ahmad was coming in, there was talk. I mean, like any other political organization, there was a big block of African FA presidents that were saying Issa Hayatou has to stay, and there was, of course, clearly a bigger block that was saying we need a new presidency. So the change, did it and has it fully represented the new direction African football was to take? Because you clearly won the...
It was Kabamba style. He took the first shot.
I want to come to that.
They went to the bush and he took the first shot. He's not saying that, but they were in the bush.
I was fearing for you that if Ahmad had lost, Uganda was in trouble.
Actually, Uganda could have been in trouble because I covered that General Assembly and it was white or black, no grey.
No, it was, but I read the situation very well. First and foremost, there was a wind sweeping across, right from FIFA, and this wind was blowing strong. And I'll tell you frankly, that was also the wish of FIFA that there's a new wave of leadership, not only at the continental level, but also at national federations. So there was a wind which was sweeping, and we won that election with 34 votes out of 54. So it was overwhelming. But we did our research, we did our counting, we spoke as FA president. Remember, I'm an FA president, so we were speaking with very many other FA presidents. And the message was clear that it was time for the change. So, yes, we risked, but it was a wise guess.
So there's extension to the FUFA house and all. Is that, they bankrolling this? Who's bankrolling that? Is this the new connection, the networking that is producing this?
No, FIFA has, when Jan came in, initially under Blatter, every federation was getting $600,000 over 4 years, and was also getting $250,000 per year, about 1.6 over 4 years. When Jan came in, his promise actually, and the reason he won this election by 3 votes, people forget that, 88 out of 85. That's how he came in. But his promise was relying on a new program, and everybody thought it wouldn't work. And they thought he's going to eat into the reserves. But the recent statistics we have, instead of the 4 billion budget, it went to 6.7. And instead of the 1 billion reserves, it's 2.7 billion. So he has done very well, and he takes credit for that. But also on top of that, in the first 3 years, you remember he just took over from Blatter. So the 3 years ending 2018, the budget was revised, and every federation was given eventually $2.2 million US. And for us, we thought that this was big. Incidental as FUFA, in my first term, we did not use this money. We did not use it at all. It is still sitting at FIFA, and that's what we are drawing on to do the extension of the headquarters, but also doing the stadium at Lugazi, and also doing the technical center at Kadiba.
Right, the FUFA President, Engineer Moses Magogo, is here on set today. Send us your questions. Any reaction to any of the topics he's discussing? The hashtag is NTV Press Box. Any question in Ugandan football, pretty much international football as well, he will be answering those. Someone I met someone the other day and they asked me, "Nema Magogo yasamba wako mpira?" And then I said, the man played football. Well, the national team archives don't have his name, but he played football.
He did, yeah. But I was going to ask, Asha,
Yes, I have a
okay,
question,
sure.
and it's really about the FIFA Forward funds. Uganda is actually among the federations that are using those funds very well, apart from, outside of the 19 that are not even getting that money and using it. But let's talk about the youth leagues. Okay, how important has that been for Uganda to have those youth leagues, and also how that has played into Uganda's qualification to the AFCON under-17 that is next month in Tanzania?
When I came into office, I talked about strategy. It is one thing that we've been working on. Whatever we have achieved them after long-term planning. In 2015, we introduced the FUFA Juniors League, and everybody thought it was not going to happen. But at FIFA, we took responsibility and said, okay, if it's a challenge to the clubs, we shall pay transport, we shall pay coaches, we shall pay equipment, we shall pay the referees. Most importantly, we shall undertake the players to go through the MRI test, which determines the age, and it's very expensive. It costs almost $1 million shillings per player, but we decided to say every player in that league must go through these testers that we are sure, and we capture our statistics very well. Almost $1 million. It's a lot of money. Yeah. The MRI test. And we did that. So eventually, there are a lot of results that are coming out of it, let alone the national under-17, the national team, but also in the clubs. Some of the quality players that we are talking about in the league today are a product of this particular league, because players get into football at the right age, pick the right tactics, the right everything. So for us, that is the biggest achievement. But on the icing on the cake is that the national team has been able to qualify to the Africa Cup of Nations for the first time, under-17. And the beauty about this again is that 4 out of these 8 countries qualify to go to the World Cup under-17. And we think that for us, this is a possible target. We have Angola, Tanzania, and Nigeria. And at this age, there's not a very big difference. How much you prepared, how much you've put into these boys. Right now, the boys are in Turkey. They were supposed to have a game today, which was postponed because of the bad weather. But tomorrow, they will play Cameroon at midday. And eventually, we have a game, I think, against Belarus and also against Morocco. Then from there, we'll come back. We have a camp in South Africa, where we think we're investing a lot in this team.
Where are you getting all this money from? I mean, we're looking at the regime before you, and a couple of other regimes before. A couple of camps had been cancelled. Even when you're coming in, you're talking about lack of funds, but money would be improved. Now you're talking about Turkey, you're talking about South Africa. The under-17 are definitely growing. There's money being thrown all over the place. Engineer, where are you getting this money?
No. There's the FIFA Forward, whereby there's money provided to do some of these programs. But most importantly, we have also worked on our marketing. So we are generating a lot more revenues from the sponsors than before. But also, most importantly, there is money coming from government. The national team is fully bankrolled by government.
That's the one I wanted to ask about, because well, it's a great coup for you to get Infantino and Ahmad on your side, but those are football people. And our government had been quite notoriously not for football, in the sense that it wasn't financing that much. And that is because maybe we have football wasn't giving them a reason too. But the general public used to hammer up government on not investing in sport. Now, your love affair with State House is the one I wanted to go to.
No, don't clarify.
Because it has actually, yeah, I'm going there. I'm saying it like that because it has actually caused quite a bit of controversy. We have one federation president who's up in arms.
Yeah, we're coming to that shortly.
He's virtually put on his gloves and he's taken on football because he's saying you don't deserve all the love that's coming from number one, from plot one. What's going on? How did you manage to get government on that side, and how do you justify that funding?
I think, like I said before, it's a strategy. We had to build our brand. You know, when you talk about building the brand, it's not just about the corporate world. It's about how big you are envisioned by everybody, including the powers that are. But most importantly, it will be a very big mistake if you give me an audience and you allow me to explain. That's not what we are not getting. The moment we go to the audience of the president and explain to him what we are doing, he bought into it. We had very good plans, and we were pulling out results. Every time we got money from State House, the national team won away from home. People forget, in Mauritania, in Comoros, we started winning games away which looked impossible before. But simply because we put our case, Lesotho, Botswana, it became possible. Because normally the challenge had always been the logistical arrangement, how you travel and all that. So I think that's where we got it. And the qualification to the Africa Cup of Nations 2017, everybody started listening to us. This was 39 years later.
Yeah.
There had been better players, better attempts, and we had never gotten there. So for us to be able to coin out that qualification gave us the audience. And when we explained our program, the good cause of football, on top of being a sport, football is bigger than that. But we have also made relationships not only with the number one, with the head of state, but also in the ministries, in finance, in education, in parliament. But it was all done out of a strategy. And one time, His Excellency the President was saying, even inside his own home, when the Uganda Cranes is playing, it is either the guards or the grandchildren when the team scores. So he had basically had to listen to the cause. Everybody was. And when we were there at his home, I mean, the grandchildren wanted to take pictures with the national team. So this is the brand which we had built, that it was a cause. And for us, you could not ignore it.
And you know, those pictures that were taken and what eventually came out of that meeting has gotten a few federation heads or counterparts saying that, you know what, football is actually favored. Engineer, football is actually favored. That's the truth. You receive more money than any other sport in the country.
Do you deserve it? And what do you have to say now about the guys who are challenging the figures?
No, well, I know one FA president, one federation president who thinks like that. I don't know others. If they have been there, I haven't heard. The other day we invited presidents and general secretaries of associations to try and share with them our story and also probably learn from them. Yes. And we did not get this kind of feedback, but eventually we had that. First and foremost, football deserves what it gets because it is football. It is not for my call. It is what has been done by football over the years. Yeah. I can't even take credit for that. It is the years that football has invested in itself. The kind of attention that FIFA has given to the development of the game. It's the #1 sport in the world. And you know, when resources are being allocated, they're not allocated for certain reasons that we may look at. For us, we have understood government, we have understood what they want, and we have exactly positioned ourselves to provide that. When resources are being allocated, they're not allocated for medals. They are allocated for bigger causes. I'm very sure the road which goes probably to your house is still Maram. The reason is because probably... It's closed? Okay, thank you very much.
It's true. Yeah, okay, you've spoken now.
That was not called for.
No, the point...
That was uncalled for.
No. The point is that normally when the government is investing, there is a reason more to medals than the number of people involved, the kind of attention that this particular activity is going to bring to government, the kind of revenues. And football, if I gave you, I could go on and on. We are the biggest tax-paying sport in this country, in billions, by the way, that we bring back to government. We bring in forex exchange for the money that is earned, either from FIFA, directly like we are talking about, we'll be bringing in $6 million over 4 years, just out of our affiliation. And then also the media, if you see how much football gets by the national team playing, how many Ugandans are employed when the national team is playing at Nambole?
Yeah.
Let alone the people who are selling the drinks, the border people, all this is part of the economy. So when you're going to analyze how much government is allocating, we have reasoned from that point of view in terms of the value that we bring.
And look at the funds. Maybe there's a political feel to it as well.
No, I don't think I look at it in terms of votes. But the government has a responsibility to make sure that there are very many people involved in an activity that they are doing. The game of football is played in every LC1 in this country. And these are young people who are involved. So the kind of attention, the kind of engagement is much, much bigger than probably the rest of the sports combined. And for us as football, what we are saying is that we actually need the rest of the sports along with us. There is a bigger voice we can put together with boxing, with athletics, with netball, and go back to government. Because there are certain things we still need from government on top of the funding. Infrastructure, the law, these are things we can speak together. So for us, we are still calling upon everybody,
even when
boxing including.
Even when they think you're heavily
just to add on what Engineer Magogo is saying, to be honest, when you look at some of these federations, they don't even have offices. Okay, if they have offices, they have 1 or 2, 3 people working in these offices. You're talking about a federation like FUFA that has, and you can correct me, Engineer Magogo, if you have about 74 employees.
No, we pay.
You pay
over 250 million in PAS you earn a year.
There you go, you know. So you can't compare that with a briefcase federation.
No, they might argue that they don't have the money yet. They want that money so they can have offices.
No.
But when he was talking about that, I remembered that you even have remittances from, you know, like foreign exchange. One of our biggest contributors is the diaspora, generally, to the Ugandan economy. And then where football is concerned, you have people like Sekaja or Onyango or Batabare, the guys who send money back home in football. And I don't think many other sports actually can
do the same.
Because we have virtually the entire national team until the other day was of people who play from abroad. And when they bring those dollars in here, they feed into the economy.
No, but even the teams that are visiting, you know, every team that visits, let alone at the club level or at national level, they come and spend dollars in this country.
Yes.
So there is too much. For me, I think it's not even a debate of comparing football and the rest of the sports. It should be how can the different sports disciplines come together and talk to government and talk to the corporate world. We want to come to NTV and ask for a channel so that the Ugandan sports disciplines can be given to the audience of Uganda if we come as a group. For me, I'm looking at the numbers and the group of all federations, boxing inclusive, athletics, we have a better cause. And for us, we shall continue on that road, despite a few individuals thinking differently. For us, the cause is sport, and we think we can do it better together.
Engineer, I want us to talk about the Africa Cup of Nations. I want to get your view on it moving to Egypt, first of all. We haven't talked to you since then. I want us to talk about Uganda's preparations to the biggest soccer showpiece on the continent and that free freeze report. I don't know if you're going to tell us any details from the report. There was a report that was presented to you about
the Commission of Inquiry.
The Commission of Inquiry, we shall be discussing that, plus a few more questions these two might actually have for you. But let's quickly cross over to Joel Kamadi, because there's so many questions coming in for the President online. Joel.
Questions, Andrew. I hope you have a pen and paper, because I don't know how I'll exhaust this, but I'll try my best. Let's start with Ham Parker, who says, always live from Abu Dhabi. Thanks for the show. Thank you, Mr. Moses Magogo and team. What I want you to ask him is, when are the Uganda Cranes kit back available at the stores, and will he still bring the Uganda Cranes to Abu Dhabi like the last AFCON for preparations? Here we wished to be blessed like then. Sir Fabian Paves, what plans does Magogo have for ladies football? Would be great to see FUFA embarking more on improving ladies football in terms of coverage, facilities, and funding. I have Mose here, who says, just want to extend my gratitude to Engineer Magogo for his generous contribution to Onduparaka FC bus fundraising. Can you all please help them sensitize the drive a bit? Thank you. Daddy Royalty says, with no doubt, FUFA President Engineer Moses Magogo is one of Uganda's greatest orators, great intellect exhibited while answering or addressing every issue. Marvin Michael says, what is the President's take on Nachivubo Stadium status and the FUFA marketing strategy? Eddie Roland Adieri, what efforts have been put to help the young local talent play on international scene, looking at Europe as the main target, because it's seen as hard for them to pursue through. Finally, Sir Fabian Pave says, what does Magogo think of match-fixing claims cited in the Uganda Premier League? And also my sincere appreciations to him for awarding Mulindwa with the honorary FUFA Presidential Award. That was classy from him. No love lost. Finally, we have Shiba Omondi, who's in Cyprus, just sending us all the love. Andrew, respond to that.
All right, there you go. Thank you very much, Joel Kamadi. Certainly so much reaction coming in for Mr. Moses Magogo online when it comes down to his job, and so many questions he's got to try answering there. I think I should ask you this and we'll get it out of the way, because I want us to talk about the Africa Cup of Nations. You talk about structures, you talk about getting facilities from government, you know, pushing for all this to come through for the development of the game. I wonder what your comment has always been about Nachivubo Stadium. I don't think we've had you on the show and had a discussion about this. Big, great, it was even called a memorial ground. Big ground for Ugandan football. Some of the biggest players I know, I've seen in pictures, have played there. Now we have a shopping mall there. With respect to the economy, what has your view always been?
No, I've been a member of the board of Nachivubo Stadium, and I realized the kind of challenges that the stadium had at that time. Of course, I left before it got into the state it is today. But what is important is that even by the time this stadium was given away, it had already been disqualified from hosting international matches, not because of the way it was looking, but because of its location. CAF and FIFA have a report to say you cannot undertake emergency. For example, if the players had to be evacuated for whatever reason, or if there was disaster, there was no way. So there are certain parameters that are used for an international stadium that Nachivubo could not pass, even before touching it. And the message we got was that this particular project was going to be redone to be able to provide some of the missing facilities. And personally, I've waited to see exactly this come into light. I know that sometimes civil engineering projects take a lot of time. I must say I'm frustrated that it hasn't come to the speed it is. Probably it is. I've not lost hope that it will not, but I think that probably the speed and interest must be changed. But for record, I think it is very important that we have that facility because of the history it carries. And I hope that eventually, when the project is done, you must understand that Nachivubo is managed by an act of parliament. The Nachivubo, actually, it is the only stadium that, not even Nambole, has what we call the Nachivubo, I think 1984 Act of Parliament, 1954 Act of Parliament, meaning that you cannot change it until you change the law. So even if somebody wanted to take it right now, you can't take it until you go to Parliament and amend the law, because it was established by a law of Parliament, by an Act of Parliament. So I'm very sure that nothing can happen. If anybody does it, it's going to do it against the law and can always be challenged at any time. So until there's a discussion in Parliament whereby the law is amended and that particular area is degazetted, there's no way it's going to be anything different.
But engineer, you lead the football docket in this country. I mean, I have been to Rwanda. The football economy is not the biggest in the region. They have more than one national stadium. And I'm asking this really for so many football fans out there who have always wondered, how come we seem to be a bigger economy, we have a brilliant president, but we don't seem to have that many facilities? Is it down to government, for example? All we have is Nambole and Njeru. Now Nachivubo is gone. Some teams are still sharing stadiums here and there. From a football docket, what's the problem?
No, I think it's also to show cause. Definitely, we lost. There's a time when the funds that we are turning up for football had really gone down. We must accept that. And for us, you know, government is not going to spend money on nothing. The most important thing is for you to show cause why government should spend money. And if you watch the drum, the competition which we invented, it showed cause that actually as a country we need these resources. There are people in Ipeche, there were people in Bohinga, in Karamoja, and we have used exactly the pictures, the story, to go back to government and say, look, we need the facilities. Without those crowds, there is no way government is going to spend, because there are very many competing priorities. You cannot make a case where there are competing priorities unless when you have the numbers and the facts on your side. So for us, that competition, one of the things that's given us is to show that actually we need the regional stadia. And Uganda's performance in football right now, the way we are emerging, again, that has shown us you don't take 40 years without qualifying to go to the Africa Cup of Nations, and you deserve to have stadia being built. But right now there is a cause. And for us, our discussion with government is in 4 areas. One of them is facilities, exactly trying to ask and answer the same questions you are raising here. The second is in funding. The third is the law. And the fourth is priorities. I mean, is policies, to make sure that our government puts in place policies that are going to help the private sector, for example, invest more into football. The other day, the owner of Vipers had to spend over 400 million shillings to put up a turf in taxes only, not in the cost of the turf. And we think that if there are private people who are going to come out to invest in areas like infrastructure where we are lacking, then there must be policies on the side of government that are going to allow these people to enjoy some holidays, and then we can have some infrastructure put in place. So these are things we are discussing, but we are very patient. We use lobbying. We talk to very many people. Sometimes it's not very easy to turn around these things, but there is a very, very good progress we are making.
Actually, about facilities, the National Council of Sports said that they're going to renovate regional stadiums across the country. I think it's about 12 in each region. So, and that will be over the next 3 years. So I hope that, you know, it comes to fruit and you know, football can benefit.
No, there's a lot of talk. And for me, the challenge is when people talk without looking. If you say you're going to repair 12 stadium, what exactly are you doing? There's a very long process for you to start talking about doing 12 stadia in 3 years from now. There's a lot of time you need in government in terms of procurement. Mark, you're working for government, you know this. Yes. There's a lot of time in terms of project design and funding. So we need to be very realistic. If we are going to come out, we need to make a proper course. We need to have the plans in place.
You don't think the National Council of Sports can do that in 3 years?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
When are we going to? I mean, all of this, if you're projecting, and it's a very good thing that you have strategies and future projections, you're looking to the future. When can you tell a Ugandan who's watching now that the AFCON is going to come to the story?
It can't be earlier. You know, when we met the president, one of the things we have proposed was to host the Africa Cup of Nations 2027. And we said there's a lot of lead time. And the exchange we had was like, let us do first things first. It is better we look at our sport internally here in terms of the regional stadia. This is the talk which is going on. But 2027, we are told that probably it is too early, considering the priorities. So for me, I would have loved it to be yesterday. I would have loved it to be the other day. As a Ugandan, I want to live that one day when we are hosting Africa here. We have everything as a country to host the Africa Cup of Nations, apart from stadia. The rest of the things, even countries that have hosted, lack. We have been to Gabon, we have been to Burkina Faso. Some of these countries lack some of the basic infrastructure that Uganda has.
They don't have
But
hotels,
Mr.
people are sleeping in
Magogo,
dormitories.
yeah, Magogo, to host AFCON, you actually need to host a youth tournament first.
Yes.
But to host that youth tournament, you again need stadia. So I think we are still a long way from achieving that. Yeah.
But we shall host the beach soccer in 2020 because it needs a lot.
That one we have the facilities.
The facilities for beach soccer, we can afford those ones.
Mark, I think you should ask yours after the break because I'm rushing for a break now.
Okay.
When I come back, we can have that. Then we can have concluding remarks as well from the president. Like again, I said, one talk about the Africa Cup of Nations, one talk about Sebastian Desabre and that referee's report. You're watching the Press Box. We're live from the Kampala Serena Hotel, proudly powered by DSTV. Quick break. When we come back, more reaction.
Zanya era wangule nga buli siringi 10 z'oteekayo ng'omusingo zikuwa omukisa gumu ogw'okuyingira super jackpot eya Sunday eno ku MTN. Nyiga star 165 star 33 hash. Eno ye star 165 star 33 hash. Teekamu ennamba zo 3 zinnamukisa. Oluvannyuma teekamu siringi 10 ali ku Airtel. Nyiga star 185 star 33 hash. Eno ye star 185 star 33 hash. Teekamu ennamba zo 3 zinnamukisa. Oluvannyuma teekamu siringi 10 era ofune super feeling olwaleero.
Welcome back. It is the press box as we jump into the third and final segment of the show from the Kampala Serena Hotel, proudly powered by DSTV once again. We have the FUFA President, Engineer Magogo, who is here with us and has been answering a couple of questions. So much reaction as well coming through on social media. In case you haven't sent in your question, do that right now. The hashtag is NTV Press Box. Before we jump into a few questions, there were some online. Mr. Magogo, one of those was about women's football. It's another long journey, isn't it? Just like youth football, the under-17s, women's football is probably a longer and harder journey. How far have we come and how happy are you with our current status?
No, in 2013, the first thing we did when I came to office was to withdraw from international competitions, the national team. We had beaten South Sudan 22-0 goal aggregate. But we had spent 120 million in those two legs and collected 600,000 in gate collection without sponsors, without government support, without any funding. We thought, and we needed to play Ghana, where we needed to spend another 200 million. So we thought that it was not the wise way of spending money, even if we had it. We didn't have it anyway. So we decided to go back and do something different. We came back with the Women Elite League. Now we have a league of 16 clubs. We have leagues in 8 of the 8 regions that feed the top elite league. We have the Women Cup, and I'm a proud owner of one of the football clubs, one of the best football clubs, women football clubs in the country, Kampala Queens. And this has given girls an opportunity. And at the side of FUFA, we have also tried, if you saw the awards, trying to make sure that every best girl that is chosen is given a car. Again, this motivates some of these girls to say that there is hope for us to be playing football. Not only the car, many of them are doing university. Some of them have gone out of the country to play football and also study. So we have given hope. And this communication goes back to the parents, to the people who have sisters, and that women can play football. And if they're given an opportunity, it is a sport that can be as well enjoyed by the women. Half of the population, or more than half of the population in this country, and the world actually, are women. And you are not going to tap, you cannot sell men's football to women when themselves are not involved. So for us, it's a strategy not only for women football, but also for general football. And we have also realized that we need women in football, not only women football. Women should be involved in administration of football at the level of employment, at the level of clubs, even if it's the men's football. And they bring a totally different balance, which we think is very important for decision making. If we had the 3 guys on this set, we could take a different decision. But if we have Asha with us, probably we could have a totally different decision we make. So
Asha, Women's Day could not come at a better time now. You put it.
Well, I have a question for Magogo. Sometimes, you know, it feels like the Crested Cranes are being maybe sidelined when it comes to, for example, they're going to Rwanda or they're going to Kenya to play an AFCON qualifier and they have to go by bus. Why is it always like maybe there's no money to buy flight tickets for the Crested Cranes? Is it just about women are not bringing in money into the federation? What can you say about that going forward?
No, but they have also still, you know, it's all about how much money is available because we work by budget. If you decided to spend all the money that you get in terms of funding from FIFA onto flying the women, probably they would play less games. But we decided that let's go to Rwanda by bus, but also fly to South Africa to play the COSAFA tournament. So sometimes we have to put in strategy in what we are doing. But this year, we are coming out much bigger. We think we have bigger programs. We have the under-17 for women. We have the under-20 for women, and we also have the Crested Crane. So we are going to invest a lot more into women football this year than probably we have ever invested. And I think the future is brighter for women football in this country.
Okay, yeah. Andrew said something about the referee's report, which you're going to say something about. But there's a question I want to put to you. It's a subject that everywhere I've seen in global football that they try to avoid because of the controversies, because of the risk you pose to hurting a brand. But some of these things we have got to address, and when I get an opportunity to talk with you here, then I ask. And it's because it's a global problem, it's not just a Ugandan problem, and it's about match fixing and betting. Those things are eating into certain leagues across the world because as big of an industry as football is, betting is on the other side a very big industry as well. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry with very many big players. Have you heard anything about it and affecting the Ugandan game? Are you putting any stops in place? Are you putting any buffers and roadblocks in place? So betting and match fixing generally.
No, Mark, stop sugarcoating everything.
Do not affect the Ugandan league the way it has.
Yeah, we've had rumors of
Yes, they
some officials from the league being affected by
unsubstantiated,
betting.
yeah. But players, referees, match officials, and even coaches and owners of clubs are rumored to be involved in a scourge that, if is not checked, then can affect all this growth that we've got.
Mark, I think I understand the question, and I think it is a pertinent one. The popularity of football calls upon other vices. By the mere fact that football is the most popular sport, probably betting is going to be on football, not in other sport again. So we are a victim of our own popularity, and we understand that as world football. And it is indeed a very big challenge. And betting or match fixing is more sophisticated because of technology and so many things that have come up now. But you must understand that there is nothing wrong with betting. What is wrong is predetermination of results. Yes. If you look at the Premier League, half of the clubs the Premier League are financed or sponsored by betting companies. There's totally nothing wrong with betting apart from the social pressure, which it puts onto the people involved. Yeah. You know, but in terms of activity, because they're just talking about a result, and the people who fix results are the players, are the coaches, are we people who are involved in the game. It's not the people who are running the betting houses. The actual act is eventually committed by somebody inside the discipline itself. And as far as FUFA we are concerned, we have come up with a call to say no one amongst the people who are involved, who touch the game in terms of the cooking, whether a coach or a referee or an official, should be involved in betting. And it's one of the things we have outlawed. And we have also gone to government because some of the players in this cannot be disciplined using football regulations. They can only be disciplined using the laws of the country. In some countries, they have put up very stringent betting laws that can affect, that can protect the sport. And in our proposal to National Council, and again to Parliament in the new sports bill, we have called for serious inclusions of the way we can protect football. We are saying if anybody, whether it's a president, whether a referee or a player, who is involved in the predetermination of a result, for whatever reason, whether sporting or betting, it should be criminal. It should be taken to court and be imprisoned. That's what happens elsewhere.
Have you heard of those rumors, Mr. President?
No, we have. We have heard, and we have carried out investigation, and the report was the other day discussed by the executive committee. The number of people, for various reasons, not only predetermination of results, but also for other reasons of corruption or whatever it is, they have been sent to our ethics committee, and investigations are going on, and I hope that we will deliver justice. But again, our limitation is that we may only discipline the people involved in the game of football, and it is very difficult with the capacity of the federation to be able to even prove those who are guilty to actually be found guilty because of the... But that's why we are saying that let it be within the laws of the country, whereby you can be summoned, the police has the powers to call you, the expertise, the resources, they can reach into your calls and everything else. But what is also very, very simple is that if betting was online, it would be completely difficult for anybody to fix results. I don't know whether people understand. It's very, very easy to pick up clues that can be used in investigation if it was purely online. But the moment it goes into betting houses and people are walking in and cash, it becomes completely very difficult and disconnected.
Let's talk about that report. I'm sure these two are burning to ask questions. Please allow me to ask this one, then you guys can come in. Let's talk about that report, which now has come to you. And of course, you've gone through it. What's in that report? What's the gist of the communication?
No, there were a number of people who have been found guilty in contravention with the regulations of football. And what we have done, again, as the executive committee, we are not a judicial body. You know, when you are dealing with such matters that are legal, you must tick every box right. When you set up a committee of Right Honorable Dan Chidega, it was just working on behalf of the executive. We couldn't go and investigate as the executive. So they have given us the report, and now the judicial bodies of FUFA, that's the ethics and the investigation and adjudication chamber, we have handed over the report to them, and they are looking at the individuals who have been listed to have committed acts. We have recordings, video, audio of some of the witnesses, and we have handed over all this material. Our intention as the FUFA is actually to make sure that we clean it up. We started it, nobody started it for us. And we shall go to whoever is found guilty and is proven guilty, definitely we shall apply the regulations as they are. But if people are found innocent, then they should also be declared innocent.
Asha, you have something to ask?
It's not all bad for the referees in Uganda. I know that Mark Sonko has been selected as one of the referees from the African continent to go and train for VAR in South Africa. let me ask this question, because Morocco and Egypt are going to implement VAR in their league starting next season. What is the chance that Uganda could actually apply VAR?
No, we are not thinking about it.
I was actually going to ask before you answered, then I felt maybe it would be political.
No, maybe there's
right?
a chance, because
Not in the next 4 years.
you
We have,
remember-
we have our strategy for the next 4 years, and VAR
It's not
doesn't-
It's not there. Because you remember the goals that you remember what game was that at Maroons?
Yes.
You remember the goal that
Yes, yes,
passed
yes,
through the net or whatever it was,
Yes,
and
they-
we
they
were
are
not
not
sure. Yeah, could have been sorted by VAR.
There have been a few controversies. I talked about Patrick Adu and KCCA versus Bull. There was even Maroons had an argument against a penalty. Express won in the 1-1 draw recently, but Express also had a big argument against the goal that Tito Okello scored, the equalizer for Vipers in the 1-1 draw again at Wankluku. So those are there, but the amount of involvement in television is a big problem. The one thing I want to ask though is that while there are so many parties in Ugandan football that your federation seems to have made happy, the referees are not exactly on that plane because when I'm now I'm involved with the management of a club, and we have arguments against their decisions, and so many other people will make noise and all. But
You never officially told us that though.
no, I have. Well, I made a lot of noise when Tito Okello's goal stood, for example.
I know what you mean,
But I'm
though.
saying that while we castigate referees so much, and the crowds do as well, I have always wondered about their remuneration as well as their protection. What is the federation doing about these guys and their pay, and about how well they are protected at this club?
No, first of all, I take the opportunity to inform our viewers and people following us on digital media that our referees have done a very good job. Incidentally, for refereeing, it is 1 out of 100 is bad. If there was one bad incident out of 100 incidences, it is considered terrible.
Yes.
But I think they have done a good job, and there are very many occasions right now the league is going on, and the results are being posted. So we need to give them credit. Two, this is a voluntary piece of work. It's not something that somebody is doing as, there's no professional referee as far as refereeing is concerned. In terms of their payment, we have upped their payment. They used to get 20,000 in 2013 for a match. Right now they get about 150,000, multiplying it by 7. And again, you must know that there are 6 people managing a game times 240 matches. I mean, it's a lot of money. But again, courtesy of our sponsors, we are able to be paying these people, and they are paid on time. So in terms of facilitation, I think we are doing well. And even in terms of the international scene, apart from Mark Sonko, we know that Alex is also being taken. There's also Mashudu Sali, who is going to do the under-17 also in Tanzania. So yes, there's a bit of recognition, but I think we always have to strive to do better.
Let's talk about the Africa Cup of Nations. Let's talk about the Africa Cup of Nations. Shortly, we shall be crossing over Joel Kamadi, and Andrew Mwangusha will be joining him as well to discuss some of your reaction on social media. You should keep those messages coming in, as many as they can. The first question about the Africa Cup of Nations is actually for the fans out there. And because we're the press box, as you know, we're the biggest show in Uganda, whether it's sport.
Absolutely.
We're actually bigger than NTV tonight. We have that confirmation now. To put us in trouble. But let me ask for the fans now. There was an arrangement for the fans in Gabon. FUFA stepped in. FUFA stepped in a couple of times. Was it Gabon? FUFA stepped in a couple of times for away matches for the fans. And some of them now are asking, Egypt, what is the federation planning for us ahead of Egypt? Are you doing anything for the Uganda Cranes fans to travel with the team to Egypt?
Together with our sponsors, Airtel, in the nearest future, we are going to come up with a way forward of how we. But you know, we couldn't start it. First of all, there was a bit of who is hosting and who is not, so we couldn't. But right now, it has been fixed to Egypt, and it's much easier to go to Egypt than it would have been going to Cameroon.
Yes.
Because we know that there are flights directly between Cairo and Entebbe. But let's come out together with our sponsors when we are ready to be able to communicate this. What is important is that we would love to have as many fans as possible, and our targets at the Africa Cup of Nations is not only to get out of the group, but at least to play into the quarterfinals. If you realize there are going to be 6 groups,
yes,
there's a round, and then there's also another round of a round of 16, and then the quarterfinals. And for us, the minimum is the quarterfinal. Winning it is still a possibility, and we'll go and fight.
Well, Magogo, well, today the announcement came that the Cranes are going to camp in Cairo just before they play Tanzania. How strategic is that for the Cranes?
No, we are just testing the waters. It is important that we try to see them. Sometimes some of our players, the challenge is when we are playing in Gabon, to be more precise, is that it was a big stage. I mean, seeing some of these big players, it was really after a very long time. And now, for this time, we are saying that we have a number of players who have played at the Africa Cup of Nations. And two, we want to put them in the environment of Egypt. And then from there, we'll be able to fly. In terms of costs, incidentally, the change isn't big. Camping in Egypt and camping here, because most of the players are coming from all over the world, some of them from Europe, and then flying to Tanzania. So we think that it is strategic, that we shall have a very, very quiet camp, because our objective for that game is that we want to win that game. There is still a winning bonus for the players to win that game, because for us it is not just about that we qualified. It is that we must win every game that is coming ahead of us. And the coach wants to use the game also as one of the preparations for the Africa Cup of Nations. So we are very serious with the game. We want to give our best against Tanzania. And whereas the best team may win, the biggest intention for us is to win the game. And that's why we have maintained the winning bonus for the players.
Well, yeah, I think when you talk about winning bonuses, actually, I just remember that the players have actually been heavily rewarded. They were laughing there all the way to the bank on the last one. I mean, the figures I had were astronomical. I almost collapsed.
Mark, I think we should go back to the pitch.
I did the maths, and it would take quite a few years of paying me my basic salary to make some of that money. But
that's the cost of football.
Yeah, yeah.
And Mark, sorry, just when you look at it in comparison with other African countries, we are still some of the lowest paying. Our budget alone for the Africa Cup of Nations is about $1 million. This particular one. But then when you compare to Kenya, it's 2.5. To Nigeria, it's 7.3. To Ghana, it's 6.5. So whereas people are also talking about getting a lot of money from government, our costs are so big, and we want to go and compete on the African continent. But look at the people we are competing with. How much are they investing? Before you look at the 10 billion that football is getting for the whole year, by the way, including all the qualifiers. Africa Cup of Nations for Kenya alone is about 2.5 million. For Ghana, 7.3. For Nigeria, about 7. For Morocco, about 6.5. Only preparing for Africa Cup of Nations.
Mr. President,
that's another parameter.
Actually, for 2017,
would you be comfortable telling us a figure on how much a player earns after we've won a game or appearance of a Cranes game at the moment?
The winning bonuses are clear. It's $2,000 at home and $2,500 away. The qualification bonus, how much they got from the president, that is their revenue. And normally we don't discuss what they get.
Okay. Now, the other question I want to ask now is you've talked about a quarterfinal, target of a quarterfinal for this AFCON minimum.
Yes.
And well, it's a far cry from having gone and not won a single game and only scored one goal on the last one. So it brings the question to me: when you set these targets for the national team coaches that you employ,
not the coach, but also the players.
The players, yeah. How much of a detail do you put to your demands? Because the reason I'm asking this is that when I sit out in amongst the fans, they want the game to be more entertaining. They want the Cranes to be a more attacking side than the one that plays, say, two pivots or two holding midfielders and two defenders on one flank, things like that. And then you have cries of introducing some excitement into the national team, taking a youngster like Alan Okello, for example. How much of an influence, how much demand do you put on that coaching setup in how they play, who they play, and outside of just the result that you want? Because it's a picture you need to paint. Because I sit amongst the fans and I hear all sorts of things they would want to see. And
no, but before you even discuss the targets you give the coach, these players normally are 4 or 5 days with the coach. They spend the biggest part of their time with the clubs, and until you have fixed your football from the club point of view, you are not going to say to the head coach 5 days and give us a style of football. So normally for us, it is about the results. It's about the results. I think that is what we set at the moment. But we're also doing something to ensure that the clubs themselves cultivate themselves into a kind of playing culture, into a kind of quality of football. By training their coaches, by bringing the underage teams, definitely that will bring up the quality. And you must confess, the quality of football 1 or 2 years ago, compared to today on the pitch, is getting much better because of the trained coaches, because of the youngsters in the junior league. Then maybe 3, 4, 5 years, we can start talking about a style, we can start talking about quality. But I must commend the current coach that by his philosophy, you can see that the team is probably more entertaining than before. We got a lot of results with Coach Micho. But then, with this particular coach, we have also gotten results with beautiful football at the same time.
And qualified for the Africa Cup of Nations. The president is here. We're asking him all the questions. You also have a chance to ask him any question you want online. The hashtag is NTV Press Box. Joel Kamadi and Andrew Mwangusha have got some of those.
And the questions keep coming in thick and fast. Moi Daniel, Engineer Moses Magogo has done great in the Uganda football compared to any of the past FUFA president. Ras Gio says how many terms, is asking actually, how many terms should a FUFA president serve? Sir Fabian Paves, you cannot have arguably the largest lake in East Africa and lack facilities for beach soccer. 2020 will definitely be fun. Solskjaer of Chagwe says, why doesn't FUFA just strike a deal with HAM to take over Nachivubo in exchange for another venue outside Kampala where a proper stadium can be built? Cephas Nendereza says he's watching on NTV Uganda with his two sons. Keep it up. Many thanks for watching. Sekamate James says, Engineer Moses Magogo is a very intelligent president. He clearly explains issues and you forget all the ill talk you have had of him all along. Sir Fabian Paves again says, I agree with Magogo on VAR. We don't need it at the moment. Even our national TVs, while covering live games, have trouble showing a replay. It wouldn't get any worse on the pitch with a screen pitch side. Finally, Sir Fabian Paves again says, great show, guys. Okay, I'm joined by Andrew Mangusha here, and I just wanted to touch on one thing. The discussion they were having there, they were talking about the refereeing and officials having grown in leaps and bounds. I'm talking about their payment and their remuneration. What's your take on that?
One, I'm pleased that the report has been discussed because when it was instituted, there was a press conference of the team handing over the report, and we've been in kind of limbo. We didn't know what was happening, and when Mike Mutebi and Sam Simbwa had something to say about the referees, I think they were just given, sentences, and they served there. So I was wondering where they were being gagged. Okay. Now that the president tells us that the report has been at least sent to the ethics committee, we wait and hope for the best, and hopefully the president can make it clear today whether that report will be made public once it's done. And then there are many good things to say about his Mr. Magogo's term, in terms of corporate, sponsorship, the branding, and the milestones that have happened. And of course, he mentioned something to do with the referees being paid and paid on time. Maybe that's a point we need to touch. You can institute all probes, get the culprits and all, but if you do not address the refereeing issue, and that we are talking payment, then we're just beating about the bush. I mentioned that the referees are being paid and on time. Before this show, actually, I spoke to about 4 referees who I cannot mention for obvious reasons. And according to them, the president can react to this. The only payment they have got is arrears from last season Azam Premier League. And they came through about a month back. As regarding Star Times Uganda Premier League, the referees have got no payment whatsoever. 22 games into the season, 8 games to go.
So they've received nothing this season. That's what they told you?
That's what at least 4 of them told me. They got payment, but that payment was from Azam Uganda Premier League. As per Star Times Uganda Premier League, the clubs are getting their money, but according to these referees, no payment has come through.
That's a great allegation. It's a big allegation.
Maybe the president can respond to that as well. Okay,
just before we head back to the president respond, let me just read about 3 comments before we get back to Andrew and the crew that side. We have Sir Fabian Paves saying, I want to ask Magogo, will the funds go to Tanzania? I think that's for the Under-17 Cup of AFCON. And then we have Kabuswaga says, do we have any referee at the Africa Cup of Nations? And finally, Aubrey Agaba says, I like the fact that NTV Press Box has given local sport all this airtime on the show. Well done, lads. That's it from us here.
Come on, guys, come on. Have you been watching the NTV Press Box? All we do is talk about local sport, man. Yeah, talk about local sport. We shall talk about some Champions League and Premier League towards the end of this very show. But I think as we try to wrap now in the last few minutes, I'll turn to the president. I think 2 main questions from Andrew Mwangusha on the other side. He talks about the referees saying otherwise, saying they haven't been paid, saying the only money they have had is from last season. You're not lying, are you?
No, definitely not. And always they will say we cannot mention the person who has passed on the information. But as far as the federation we are concerned, normally if the payments are to staff or to employees or to referees or to players, it is a detail between us. What is also true is that we pay referees from the amount of money we get from the sponsors. And this money comes in quarters. And the last quarter came like last week. Even the clubs have just received it. So you cannot expect it to have been paid before it has been received. But in principle is that whenever we get our incomes, they have been aligned to particular expenditures. So yes, indeed they will be paid for the quarter, and these things are calculated. For example, today I can tell you all the 22 clubs in the big league have been paid 10 million shillings each. So indeed there is a lot of funds that we get from the corporate and we send them out. Shall we make the referees report public? No, and that's the decision of the executive committee.
Okay. That seems quite conclusive now, doesn't it? Guys, we've got to try and wrap this up. We've had so much reaction on social media, but suddenly we're running out of time as well. I think I'll end up with you, Mark. Oh, I should ask the president to wrap first.
Yeah,
he probably has
finish, then I can say something
probably,
about the European game.
Any final message to the Ugandan football fans out there? And I tell you what, guys are waiting for the Africa Cup of Nations. Maybe you should also promise a couple of those shirts for the press box crew, Mr. President.
I think that's a good...
You're asking for shirts? Tickets, what's wrong with you?
I've gone cheap, I've gone very cheap.
Andrew, you're speaking for yourself.
The biggest show in the land.
Mark and I and Anton Mwangusha.
Okay, shirts and tickets.
No, I must mention, I think there was one fan out there who said that he commends the time given to Ugandan sport. I will not say local sport.
Yeah.
By the show, I think that's commendable, and I must also mention it. I'm always a person who is responsible for my own comments. I think this is currently the biggest sports show in the country. And that comes from me, and I can repeat it everywhere. So thank you, you guys, for what you're doing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And in terms of wearing our shirt, for us it is an honor if it can't be really done, because again for us it is a strategy for our brand getting bigger. You are TV persons, you are public persons, so for us it is not something you ask for, it is something we take as an opportunity to be able to give them out. Also to the fans out there, we as a federation, we are trying to work onto a bigger strategy to make football particularly an activity for the youth in this country, to solve some of the challenges of the youth unemployment in this country. If football can become an economic activity that can employ people, not only on the pitch, but some will work in the stadium, some will clean the stadium. It's a form of employment that we want to bring to town, to this country. So we think that's important. About the government funding, again, my comment is that it is possible for every federation to get even a lot more than what football is getting. It's not that that basket where we are getting the money from is depleted. It is possible that a lot more money can be provided. It's about how you show your cause, how you show, you justify why you should be paid this money. And the powers that have listened to football can even listen to everybody else. It's not important for us to keep running around. I think it is important for us to synergy, so that we have a bigger cause in terms of funding. There's a very big funding gap if you look at other countries that we want to compete with. Not only football, but also other federations. We need to bring our resources together, have a good cause to the powers that are, and we have a parliament today which is really very friendly in terms of sport. I'm sure when we go there, the parliament represents Ugandans. Definitely we can get a bigger budget than the 10. Probably also for clarity, I'll take the opportunity as I conclude. Actually, the 10 billion was given to football. It wasn't given to the sports sector. And it was very clear that if it's not used, the balance must go back to the treasury. I think that is also some confusion. So it's not just about what football is taking. It was given to football in writing, that this is for football and football can use it. If it can't use it, the balance has to go back. It was not given the sports sector. So anybody else can as well go and make a case. But I thought when we go together, like when this particular fund was being negotiated for, there were only two federations in this particular arrangement, netball and football. But we negotiated for everybody else, and whatever has been availed, we have been assured that more can be availed. So I think we need to be positive. We need to make our country better and make our sports followers interested in sports, not only football.
Mr. President, thank you very much. As you conclude, I think you didn't talk about the tickets.
Yeah, no, that will
strategic.
But big action
we've got time. We've got plenty
big
of
action
time,
from Europe. We've got 5 minutes to wrap up the show tonight. We had a draw for Liverpool in there, a victory for Manchester City, stand the tables at the top.